What's up, Tribe 2.0? We are back to talk about chapters 14, 15, and 16. Is that right? 14, 15, and 16 of. No, 13, 14, 15. My bad. 13, 14, 15 of Indigo by Beverly Jenkins. And so we left off on the last, at the end of chapter 12 with Miss Hester getting her first taste of a little bit of oral stimulation. And Galen has started to profess his desire to marry her. Now, of course, she thinks that he's just playing, he's teasing her. There's no way in the world that he could really, really be trying to marry her. And he is like, girl, you're going to be my wife, but okay. I mean, you keep thinking it's not going to happen, but you're going to be my wife. So, Ezra Shue and his band of slave catchers are back in town, and of course, making everybody nervous. They've stopped moving passengers, and the Underground Railroad has pretty much shut down. But then there are some riots that have taken place. Raids that have taken place on some of their neighbors' houses, and they end up arresting a married couple, the Blackburns. Now the Blackburns ain't bothered nobody. Ain't nobody. Matter of fact, Hester said they not active with the abolitionist movement. They are runaways, but they mind their business. They stay quiet. They stay to themselves. So the fact that just randomly somebody would show that they would show up at their house with a warrant, and some slave owner in Kentucky is saying that they belong to him, it's a little curious. But Hester and the vigilance committee, they get together and they come up with this plan to break them out of jail. Now, the husband has been moved to Detroit because these types of things have been going on, but the woman is still at the local jail. And so the ladies go to visit her in jail. And Sheriff Lawson, who, he's real lenient on them. He knows what they're doing. Matter of fact, we found out that he actually was active with the abolitionist movement until he became the sheriff. So he knows what's going on in his town. But he don't bother them, and he tries his best to keep, to the best of his ability, keep trouble away from them as they're moving slaves through, or runaways, I should say, through town. Um, so the ladies show up to, under the guise of bringing, I believe her name is Sarah Blackburn, a change of clothing. And they go in to visit her. And what they end up doing, honey, they do the switcheroo. Hester poses as Sarah. They smuggle Sarah out. People think it's Hester, and they keep it moving. Well, around dinner time, they realize we don't have our prisoner anymore. This is Hester. Now, Hester, for all intents and purposes, everybody believes Hester to be a freeborn woman, and so she knew she was taking a risk. She knew she was putting her life on the line, or freedom on the line. But she figured she would just get a fine, and it would be what it is. Now, she did get a fine, and the sheriff was like, "Come on, Hester, like you are really putting me in a bad situation. Like Ezra Shue and his crew are out there waiting to take this woman back to Kentucky, and you got me looking crazy." He said, "Listen, I gotta keep you overnight for the for the appearances, and you're gonna have to pay a pretty hefty fine." And when he tells her what the fine ends up being pretty much all the money she made off of the sale of her land. And she was like, "Well, there's that." Whoo, I was good for a minute, but she accepts that as her penance for being a part of escaping. Um, so he he comes back later on that night, and he talks to her. Come to find out that the sheriff and her dad were actually best friends. They grew up together. They were best friends, and they also found out that Lovejoy's daughter did not run away. Lovejoy sent his daughter away to get her away from the sheriff's son, and he said that his son is very angry and very much upset about the whole situation. So they had a good little conversation. So later on that night, the sheriff was like, "Listen, I have to go take care of something. Like I really, my relief was supposed to come, but he called out, and I really don't want to leave you here because Ezra Shue and his crew was out there, and Ezra Shue had already come through there and was talking about how pissed off he was, and about the whole escape situation." And so he was like, "Well, listen, I have to go. I'm gonna be gone for less than an hour. I gotta go. I promised my wife I would do something up to the church, and if I don't, I'll be in trouble." And she tells him, she said, "Sheriff, go ahead." He said, I said, "But I need something from you. Please promise that you're not gonna escape." She said, Sheriff, I promise I'll be here when you get back. Like, I'm not, I appreciate, like, I know you be doing good by us. I'm not going to do you like that. So he leaves, and then he comes back on second thought. He brings her a rifle, and he brings her some ammunition. And he was like, listen, Ezra Rashu and his crew still floating around. Just in case he come through, shoot him between the eyes. Okay? Okay. So she's there for a little while, and she said then she starts hearing scratching at the door. It's Ezra Shrew and his crew, and they've come to you know get to know her biblically, whether she wants to or not, which we know she don't want to. And she pulls the gun on them, and they were like, "You can't pull no gun on us. That's illegal." She was like, "Listen, that's in the South. We up north. If you come one step closer, I promise you, I'm gonna shoot you between your eyes." And they called her bluff, and so she ended up shooting like above their head. And they were like, "Oh hell no, she crazy as hell." And they got up out of there, and she locked herself in. She told them to leave the keys because they had keys to the cell. You leave them keys in here. So she ended up locking herself in the cell. So later on, she starts hearing people at the door again, and come to find out it was Galen and Foster. Foster had found out what she did, and he went to go get Galen and asked for his help. So they showed up, and just as oh gosh, I'm sorry, y'all. Just as they showed up, the sheriff came through and was like, "What's going on?" And so they explained what happened with Ezra Shue and everything. And Galen was like, "Sheriff, under these circumstances, I really would like to take Miss Hester home." And he was like, "Of course." He said, "But she does have to post bail." Baby Galen, because Renault is with him, Andre is with him, and he says, "Go and pay that man." So he ends up taking out a bag full of gold. He was like, "I promise that should be enough, right?" And of course the sheriff was like, hell yeah." So on the ride home, of course, Foster is fussing at Hester, talking about how could you do that? That's crazy. You putting yourself in jeopardy. You putting your land in jeopardy. They can come and get you. What is wrong with you? And Galen sort of feels the same way, but he definitely understands why she did it from the perspective that he's on the road as well, and he's a conductor as well. But the person that's fallen in love with this woman was not happy about the whole situation. And he tells her, "Listen, you go to bed. You go home and you rest." So they drop her off at home. She takes a bath and she goes to bed. And of course, he came to see her, honey. He came to see her. And they talk about it. And she, once again, he's telling her, "Listen, you gonna be my wife." And she was like, "Oh shoot, I lost my page." He was like, "You gonna be my wife?" And she was like, "I am not gonna be your wife." But what she did realize, they did have a conversation. She said, "You might be right about this whole trader situation, because how would anybody know the Blackbird? Like, no, like they don't bother anybody. They don't get involved in nothing." So she is starting to feel like maybe something don't smell right. Something ain't right. So the next day, hold on, y'all. So I mean, they play around a little bit more. He shows her some more pleasure in the bedroom, and they talk about taking it to the next level. And he was like, "Listen, that's not something I can do. That is something that is set aside, for a husband and wife. But it is what it is. You said you don't want to marry me." So the next day, I'm making sure I get to the right thing. Okay, so the next day he rolls up on her, and she's actually on her way out to go run some errands. And he says, "Listen, will you go make mud pies with me?" And she says yes. And it actually took him by surprise. He was like, "Really?" And she was like, "Yes." And she has made up her mind that she's going to enjoy the moment. She's like, "I don't know how long he's going to be here. I don't know, but I do know that at this point, I probably, after what happened with Foster, I probably ain't even gonna open myself up to a fake marriage at this point. And so I'm gonna go ahead and learn all the ways that a woman and a man enjoy each other. I'm gonna take it for what it is, and when he leaves, I'll just deal with it when he leaves. But I'm gonna take it for what it is, and I'm gonna enjoy life, for right now." And so she says, "But I have a couple of errands to run first." So she has to go by the school and drop some books off to Foster, even though he's not in town. He's in Detroit, but she said, "I just want to drop these books off so that they'll be here when he gets back." So they get to the school and they see B's son, who also is like the maintenance man up to the area, up to the school. They see his wagon and then they see Foster's wagon, but they're like, well, Foster's out of town. What's his wagon doing here? So she said maybe he got back early, you know. So she goes into the schoolhouse, honey. Baby, she sees Foster's wife laid out on the floor with B's son. I think his name Lemmy, baby. And of course, Galen rolls in behind her like, oh damn, you know. And of course, it's not as shocking to him as it is to her for so many reasons. I mean, one is shocking because we find out that's the first time she's ever seen two people having sex, you know. Two is shocking because of course she's like, how could you do this to Foster? And Jenny told her, listen, a woman got some needs. Like, he don't know what he doing in the bedroom. Just because you was cool with having a sexless marriage don't mean that I am. Okay, he don't know what he doing, and I got some needs. And she said, and then she turned around and back on them and was like, listen, I saw how y'all was looking at each other at the party. I'm no fool. I know that there's some feelings involved. So if you don't want me to start spreading gossip about you, then you'll keep this to yourself. And you know, Galen was like, so that's what we doing? He said, let me tell you something. Not near rumor better circulate about Hester. He don't care about himself, but he protecting Hester. Said not near rumor better circulate about her, or you will have to deal with me. And she was like, I'm just saying. All I'm saying is, if you protect my secrets, I protect yours. He was like I said, nothing better be out there about Hester. Cause listen, this ain't got nothing to do with us. But I promise you, you don't want this, right? So they end up playing mud pies, you know, playing with their mud pies, and that's when, you know, Hester asked him about, you know, men and women, and that's when we find out that's her first time actually seeing men and women have sex, and you know, it was a very shocking sight for her, honey. Now, she also let Abigail in on what was going on. She told Abigail all about her and Galen, you know, hanging out and enjoying each other's company. She still told him about how she met him, you know. And she told him about what went down to the church. And Gail was like, well, listen, I ain't want to gossip, so that ain't my business. That's between you and them, and I ain't got nothing to do with it, you know. So Gail ended up going out of town. She's going to visit her family. She's gonna be gone for about a month, you know, real convenient, you know. And Hester decides that she just ready to do it. And so she gets her so when she goes to take Gail to the train station, Sue was there watching what's going on, and there's some fugitives there. There's this woman who's there with her master and her two children, and they're trying to tell her, listen, you free. Like, by Michigan, you know, state law, the minute you set foot on free territory in Michigan, you are a free person. You don't have to leave with your master. And so it ended up being a few of the people from the Vigilance Committee, and Hester saw what was going on and she joined in, and they ended up getting that woman and her children away from the master. Come to find out, he was the father of those two children, and he had sold their sons into slavery. And she was like, he said, I promised you, I told you I was going to free you in a couple of years. And she was like, I don't believe you. What, you told me you would never sell my children away, but yet you did. And he was like, well, that was just business, you know, don't you understand? And she was like, so these two children right here, it's just business, so you'll sell them away from me too? She was like, I don't trust you. And so she agreed to leave with them. And so they immediately got her out of town. They got her straight to Detroit as fast as they could, because they were like, we know that her hanging out here is not going to be safe. But Ezra Shue was there watching. He saw the whole thing, baby. So then later on that night, Hester decided to throw caution to the wind, and she decides she's going to go to Galen. She wants him to, you know, take her virginity, and she wants to learn all about what that's like to be with a man. So she puts on one of her nightgowns, covers herself up in a little cloak, honey. She rides on over to the house. Of course, Maxie opens the door. Maxie was like, well, you know, Master, you know, Vashon, he didn't already retire for the evening. And Hester, she hesitates for a second, but then she was like, well, can you take me to him? And Maxie sort of hesitates, but she was like, all right, you know, whatever y'all want to do. If y'all like it, I love it, honey. And so she ends up taking her up to his room. And Hester, you know, comes to him. And he was like, am I dreaming? Like, are you really here? And she was like, yeah, I'm here. Like, I'm here. And she was like, you sure? And so they end up having sex, honey. You know, it was a nice scene. It was well written. It's given a lot of sensitivity to the fact that Hester, you know, was a virgin and all of that. And the next morning, Galen was like, "You know that means you gotta marry me now." And she was like, "No, I don't." He said, "Well, what if you carrying my child?" She was like, "Oh, what we did last night can result in me being pregnant?" He was like, "Yeah." Because he said that, you know, he tried to pull out, but he just couldn't help himself. So he emptied his seed, you know. And so she gets out of there as fast as she can, and she goes straight to B's house. And she was like, "B, I feel like my aunt did not tell me everything I needed to know about women and men. Can you fill it in?" And she sat there and she asked B as many questions as she needed to ask, and she answered all the questions that she needed to know. So, baby, that's what it is. Now, she also debated about telling Foster. And Galen and Gail both told her, "Listen, that man is in love. He is not going to listen to you. He's going to think you just a jilted lover, that you're jealous. Like, the best that you can do is stay out of it." And like Galen told her, a leopard eventually will show its spots. So eventually, she's going to reveal who she really is, and he's going to have to deal with it. So anyway, that is those three chapters. Don't forget, we're going to be going live tomorrow, and we're going to be discussing chapters 16, 17, and 18. So I will talk to y'all then. Peace.